What's up, guys? This is going to be a cool review. Over at my friend Bryan Lomax's channel, we do a thing on Thursday nights called Movie Night, where we do a commentary on a certain movie. So Bryan had a really cool idea. He said, you know what, why don't we take this even further? We'll take a movie from the Hannibal Lecter series, Manhunter, and we'll all review it at the same time. So the exact time that this review came up, 3 more reviews for Manhunter also came up. One from Bearded Movie Guy, one from WILI Reviews, and one from Bryan Lomax. I'll put links to their channel below, but I'm also going to create a playlist for all 4 reviews. And what's cool about this is you can get a different perspective on a certain movie, 4 different perspectives. So without further ado, here's the Drumdums review of Manhunter. Manhunter stars William Petersen, Tom Noonan, and is directed by Michael Mann. So in Manhunter, William Petersen plays an FBI profiler named Will Graham. And he is retired because of his last case, which was Hannibal Lecter. He put Hannibal Lecter behind bars, but in doing so, there was a cost to it. When you profile these serial killers that are really deranged, a little bit of that can seep inside your head, and that's what happens to Will Graham. So he takes some time off. So then this new serial killer case called the Tooth Fairy comes up, and they need Will Graham's help. He is so good at his job that they actually reach out to him and say, hey, we need you back on the job. And at first, Will Graham says, no way in hell I'm doing this. I'm done with this crap. But then they promise him that if you come in, you're only going to be working behind the scenes. We just need you to look at the files. But of course, as we all know, things don't go the way Will wants them to go, and he gets in way too deep with the Tooth Fairy. Now, I'm sure there are quite a few Hannibal Lecter fans out there that probably didn't know about Manhunter. I was one of them. I thought the first movie featuring Hannibal Lecter was Silence of the Lambs. But then, shortly after watching Silence of the Lambs, I had heard about this movie, Manhunter. And it's based on the book Red Dragon, which was another movie with Ed Norton that came out later to capitalize on the Hannibal Lecter craze. But in Manhunter, you don't have Anthony Hopkins. You actually have Brian Cox playing Hannibal Lecter, and we'll get into him. But let me tell you what I liked about Manhunter. First off, I'm going to mention Michael Mann. I'm a huge fan of Michael Mann. He directed Heat, which is one of the greatest bank heist movies ever. As a matter of fact, The Dark Knight borrowed heavily from Heat. Chris Nolan even said that. But Michael Mann is such a stylized director. You can tell he's got his own signature to his movies in the production, in the cinematography, even in the score. And oftentimes when you watch a Michael Mann movie, it's going to be very stylized, but it's also going to have a few surprises along the way. That's what I like about his direction. You know, any great director like Tarantino or Fincher or Michael Mann, they're going to have maybe a little bit of shock value to their direction. Also, I'm a big fan of William Petersen, especially in the late 80s and the 90s. He also did a movie called To Live and Die in LA, which is one of my favorite crime dramas. It's another movie from the 80s. I won't go into too much detail about that movie, but I will just say it's got such an awesome twist. Definitely check out To Live and Die in LA. But William Petersen is really great in Manhunter. He really has that leading man quality. He jumped over to the TV route later in his career, but in the 80s, for crime dramas, William Petersen was one of the top dogs. Also, the plot of this movie is really cool because, like Silence of the Lambs, you don't have one iconic killer. You actually have 2, the Tooth Fairy and Hannibal Lecter. Now, Hannibal Lecter, played by Brian Cox, only has a really small part in this movie. Will Graham actually goes to him to help him solve the case, and I do like that tug of war, that tit-for-tat conversations between them, much like Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs. I always like, you know, the quid pro quo, I guess you could say, between Lecter and whoever's talking to him. But in Manhunter, he's not as good as Anthony Hopkins, although Brian Cox is a great actor. But his interpretation of Lecter is very different from Anthony Hopkins. And Anthony Hopkins, that is just one of the greatest acting performances that I have ever seen to this day. And it's hard to compete with that. But also, the Tooth Fairy is a very interesting serial killer. He's a completely different type of killer than Hannibal Lecter. He's very vulnerable, actually, even though he's so big, he's so tall. But there are many scenes with him, played by Tom Noonan, that are just really eerie and really creepy. Usually in real life, when you see stories about serial killers, many times they fit the characteristics of the Tooth Fairy. Finally, I also really enjoyed the music in this movie. Michael Mann actually has signature scores in his movies, and especially in the 80s, you have that kind of synth type score. Some of it even sounds a little bit like John Carpenter, but that just adds another really cool layer to Manhunter. And I really like the use of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida in the final act. So guys, I'm not gonna do any comparisons with Red Dragon, which is the same plot. I think both movies have their pros and cons, but because Michael Mann directed Manhunter, I prefer that one. I think it has more of a director's stamp on it. And I would definitely give it a purchase worthy. So anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on Manhunter? Looking forward to hearing them. And make sure you check out the other 3 reviews on this movie by Bearded Movie Guy, CP from WILI Reviews, and Bryan Lomax. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Drumdum out.